Hello, Bridge Scholars. This is Dr. J coming at you once again with Task Writing and Grammar Online. This is number 2 in a series of lessons that will help get you started digging into the grammar and writing knowledge that you need for the task. Last week, we talked about must-haves for sentences, sentence building blocks like subjects and verbs. In this lesson, we're going to expand our sentences using words that describe and how to organize them in lists, using a comma correctly. We're going to meet the colon and use that correctly in our sentences while getting to know more about our colleagues as we continue to expand two truths and a lie. And by the way, you'll need to complete that activity by responding to your classmates and revealing your lie so we can feature your sentences, as we will do this week with Anthony and others. Let's review. Think about what you know about sentences. Which of these are sentences, and can you justify your answers? Number 1, collecting weird patterned socks is a hobby of one of our classmates. Yes, it's a sentence. We have a subject. Remember, you need a subject in a sentence, and the subject here is collecting weird patterned socks. You also have a verb, is, which is not an action verb, but it still works as the verb in a sentence. Therefore, number 1 is a sentence. Number 2, Mr. T taught science and computers. Mr. T, the subject. The verb, taught. A short sentence here tells us that Jeremy logged in. Number 4, SCAP. Yes, it's a sentence. It's got a subject, even though you can't see it. You know that it's probably a cat or some feline creature. Last week, we learned about commands, and these are the only types of sentences that can be one word. On the task, however, these will not appear as one word. You'll be asked to identify the sentences that are commands. One-word commands are very effective with pets. Let's look at number 5, the best idea I've had all day. It's a great idea, but it is not a sentence, so it doesn't get a nice little check mark. Now that you understand what a sentence is, it's time to learn some ways to expand them. Let's start on our classmates. Let's see how we can spice up our sentences. Eric is a student. Let's see what information we can add. We went to Truths and a Lie and we found out some qualities that Eric has. Kind and helpful. Eric is a kind, helpful student. At least that's what he told us on Two Truths and a Lie. And Eric, I hope that's true. We need those qualities now more than ever. One of the easiest ways to expand a sentence is to add adjectives or describing words, like kind and helpful. Why did I add a comma? Because you need a comma between two adjectives that are right next to each other, most of the time, but we'll deal with exceptions later. Let's look at what our colleague Gregorio wrote about himself, bearing in mind that one of these statements is a lie. Let's say we want to combine these sentences. This is actually something you will need to do for the task. We could write this: Gregorio is a dedicated, fit, and socially conscious athlete. Did you notice the comma before the and? This is super important for the task. Whenever there's a list of items with commas, the task makers want you to put a comma before the and. You don't see this done everywhere and never in newspapers, but it's essential for the task. Can anyone try to guess what the lie is? Guess we'll have to ask Gregorio. Now it's your turn. Take a moment to think of a sentence about yourself. Share it in the chat box and speak it out loud when the instructor prompts you. Use adjectives and check your sentences to see if you put the commas in the right place. Do not be afraid to make a mistake. That's how we get it right. Your instructor will let you know when to suggest corrections for your classmates. After you're finished, we're going to ask you to recreate the comma rule. Do you remember 2 rules for commas? Jump in and write in the chat box. You can also use the chat to ask questions. By the way, you can substitute different nouns for athlete, like student or parent, or whatever comes to mind at the moment. Remember those comma rules? Number 1, you need to separate lists of items with commas. The AND rule, whenever there's a list of items with commas, put a comma before the AND. Are you ready to move on? Great. Let's talk about animals. Some contributions from the pet lovers among us. Kayla is an animal lover. She has a cat, a dog, and a leopard gecko named Trico. There's another way to make a list using commas plus a colon. Kayla has 3 pets, colon, a cat, a dog, and a gecko. If you were to cover up the part of the sentence that asks for the colon and ask yourself, could this be a sentence in itself? Kayla has 3 pets. The answer is yes. Kayla has 3 pets is a sentence in itself. It could stand alone as an independent clause. Remember, the colon is only used after the independent clause. You may find this confusing, but after you do it over and over again, you'll get it. Practice on truth, truths, and a lie. Go ahead and reveal your lie. List some things that are true and not true about you. Use commas and colons. Then reply to your classmates with sentences about which aspects of their personalities you've observed and what you can relate to. Use a colon. I could say something to Kayla like, I have owned 3 cats, Tinkerbell, Lucifer, and Collie. You can see how I use colon for a list of items, that is, the cats that I have owned. I can use the colon for lists of action verbs. Let's look at the Mr. T sentence, this big whopper of a lie. Mr. T never met President Barack Obama, shook his hands, or chatted with him at the zoo. Instead of 3 items or 3 adjectives, I listed activities that he never did. I hope that someday Mr. T will meet Barack Obama. We all have things we need right now. I'll bet everybody listening today can write a sentence like this. Items that are hard to find during a pandemic include the following: toilet paper, paper towels, and chicken. Can you think of 3 things that you need right now? Put them together in a sentence with the commas. What is the function of the colon in this case? The colon cues the reader that the writer is about to name some items she is looking for. Here's another cool way to use a colon from one of the most famous first ladies. The colon tells the reader that the writer is about to introduce a quote by Eleanor Roosevelt. Maybe you have an inspirational quote, maybe one that seems timely at this moment. Take a moment, if you can, to share a quote with your classmates. Be sure to introduce the quote before the colon and quote after the quote. Need a review? There's a great practice site at Purdue University's online writing lab. When you fill in the answers, it will show your percent score. Your instructor will have access to a PDF with the answer key for quick reference. So that's all for today with Dr. J. Thanks for participating. Thanks for your inspirational quotes and sentences about yourselves and your colleagues on 2 Truths and a Lie. Keep practicing those commas and colons. Here's an excellent website to practice with now. Once you're able to understand how to use commas and colons, you'll be able to understand how to expand sentences and succeed on the writing task. Thanks, and see you next week.